like slowly getting everything back on my phone and whatnot, so it like takes forever. So do you need a hard out at 6:30?
Yes.
Okay, I'll set a timer for that. And I will just...
Because I got to be in Maple Grove. I got to go pick my girl up, which is 5 minutes from here, and I have to be in Maple Grove for church at 7.
Okay, I'll be cognizant of that. Got it at 6:30. I'll just try to like kind of...
If you want to come to a cool church, though, come check out our Good Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym after this, actually. But
That's what's up. Well, let's talk about that.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to turn my phone on silent.
Appreciate it.
Great. I just put a new phone case on here, and now it's not recognizable with them.
Yeah, phones are difficult.
But I want one that protects my screen itself, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I got 3 of them bought off of Amazon.
You got 3 cases?
Yeah, just to see which one I liked.
Hmm.
And that way, swap them
Yeah,
out.
just return them.
This one's a little bulky, not even return it.
Just
You
swap
get tired
them
of
out.
one, swap them
Yeah.
out. They're $20 a piece.
Yeah, I guess that's not too bad.
No.
This was like $40 or $50 at the Verizon store.
Right on.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Have you ever done a podcast like this with like the headphones on?
I just did one with the Pod Gods, with
Okay.
Brady and those guys like a month ago.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
saw that you did one. I just didn't know if it was like headphones or... I guess I don't really know what their setup's like.
I've been in the studio before, man.
Yeah.
I grew up in a music studio, so
Oh, really?
good. I'm comfortable around a mic.
Okay. So I saw you were rapping on that, right? So do you have like experience? Like, I guess what's your studio experience?
Are we recording now?
Yeah, I just honestly let it roll.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure
Before you say anything too obscene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure it's for PG. Okay, yeah. Tighten,
Maybe we'll cut this part out.
tighten this bad boy up. Sweet.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, normally I just let it roll, and then honestly, I don't really have anything like too extravagant. I just go, welcome back to the Real Talk Podcast. Today we have Forrest Green on. We're going to dive into the life of the master loan officer and just his personal life.
Thanks, Nathan, man. I appreciate you having me on today. Yeah, I know that we don't have this scripted, and we don't really have anything directly to talk about. So I'm a wealth of knowledge, and I like talking. So
Yeah, no, me too.
we're good.
Yeah, and I feel like I've kind of like known you a while, but more so like from the business side of things, never like who like Forrest is as a person.
Right on.
But so tell me a little bit more. You said you grew up in the studio?
Kind of. My family was in music. So my dad was a singer my whole life. My aunt did gospel. My whole family did gospel music.
Okay.
My aunt did really well with gospel music. She was nominated for a Grammy.
Oh, wow.
For gospel music. And then, and like the Sounds of Blackness practice in my grandparents' church basement, that type of thing. So I grew up around a lot of music, in and out of studios when I was a kid,
Okay.
for sure.
So did you ever like try to make your own music or kind of like, I mean, I guess what's your experience with music other than just kind of growing up with it?
I write songs and rap. I did that for a long time. I used to do a lot of performances locally, like battle rapping contests. When I was growing up as a teenager in the 90s, battle rapping was a real thing. You could go to, open mic places and you would actually battle people and stuff like that. So there was a lot of that. So I think that was early on in my life. I thought that was going to be a career path that I was going to take, My dad won Star Search back in the day. That was like the first version of The Voice or American Idol type of thing.
Okay.
The guy, Ed McMahon, you probably don't even know who that is. But,
No.
but Ed McMahon was the host at the time. He was like Johnny Carson's co-host on the late night show or whatever. Then they did this music, contest type of thing that they would do called Star Search. And so that was, one really cool thing to watch my dad do. But he traveled around the world singing when I was younger, yeah.
So it's in your blood. That's interesting. So how do you kind of go from, like, what was the transition of, like, I'm going to do music to, like, maybe something else? Or, like, did it go from music to loans? Or kind of what's that like?
No, man, I'm 43. So there was a whole lot in between being a teenager and being 43. So there's definitely some stuff that fills in that gap there. What got me into mortgages, honestly, is that I was a bill collector for a little bit. So out of high school, I wanted to move. I moved out to Las Vegas. When I lived in Las Vegas, my first job was in bill collections. And I had a different approach. I think it's the same approach I take in my mortgage business, which is just kind of having grace for people. I think that in our interactions and working with me, I hope that you see that it's not so much a different person in my business world as I am in real life. So with bill collections, even in that, I cared about what the people were going through, and people resonated with that, and I got them to pay their bills. So I learned about credit during that time, and a lot of the stuff that I was doing was bigger balance charge-off credit cards. and those folks own properties, and so I would help them navigate. A good way to pay off your debt is to do a refinance, and I would refer them to a loan officer. One day I decided to call that loan officer, find out what he was making, and I realized I was in the wrong business. Yeah, so that's kind of my story on how I got to mortgages in a very short version.
Yeah.
I'll fire that back at you. What made you decide to go right into real estate?
There wasn't not like I didn't really have like a job that led into it. For me, it was really just kind of like, I don't know. I was like in high school. I'm like, I'm gonna go to college, I guess, do stuff, maybe learn something. I don't know. I was like between like 7 different majors. I'm like, well, I like econ and stats. I like nutrition. I like psychology. I like this. I like that. I'm like, what do I do? So I just kind of went and I was like a nutrition major. But like the last half of my senior year, there just like wasn't as much school stuff to do. So I just like would stay up late at night and just scroll Zillow, and just like it started off going to like Lake Minnetonka houses and looking at like the $5 million houses. And it just kind of whittled down to like $300,000 houses. And then I found Bigger Pockets podcast. And I went, oh, you could invest in real estate and like you can make money off of that. Like that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So then I thought like I want to get into real estate. And I when I got to college right away, I just emailed a couple of the realtors in the area. I was like, hey, can I like intern for you or just like sit in and just kind of like learn what you got going on? 4 didn't respond. And then one was like, yeah, sure, come along.
Is that Tyler Miller?
No, that was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Guy called Dan Stacy. And so I met with him a couple times, learned a few things. But then he's like, I'm trying to get out of the business, and like you like got class and then soccer and then like you got to go to the trainer after that. Like there's just not enough time. Like I want to be done by 5 and you're available at like 6.
Gotcha.
So like that just didn't really work out. And then fast forward like, 2 weeks later, classes start. And like, I hate school. This is just terrible. I don't know. Not a huge school guy.
No,
and then
not into academics. It was just like,
I mean, like I did well. Like I had good grades and all that. I just like hated it. It's just not like what I wanted to do. And then COVID hit. So I went and I was like playing sports, and then 2 months later I tear my MCL, and then like 3 months later COVID happens, and then I'm like, well, it really seems like a sign just not to keep doing this. So then I just kind of decided not to go back to school. Then I was like, well, let me just kind of start working and start saving up some money, because I was like, I want to do something sales, like either probably real estate, but like maybe insurance. Right. And then I just kind of went into real estate, just kind of met with people, just kind of asked a few questions. Then I was like, I think this is what I want to do.
This is your bag, right? Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you played soccer in school?
Yeah, soccer and track.
Okay, because I seen you kick a soccer ball at my office.
Yeah, it didn't look like a soccer player there.
Right. For you guys that don't know, Nathan missed and he fell.
Well, I hit it. I just slipped.
He slipped. Yeah, he did hit the ball. Okay, correction. Right on, man. Yeah, I mean, it's been a fun ride. I do approach my business from a place of like grace and understanding, right? That's where you have to start with almost everything. And because a lot of people that I work with, they're not, don't get me wrong. I have clients that are multimillionaires buying $3-4 million homes, right? But that's not the majority. That's the minority, right? The majority of folks that are coming to work with me are typically first-time home buyers, people who, these are still people who may have saved up $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, but it's a fear thing because it's an unknown process, and most people come into it nervous. So that's one of the first questions I ask when filling out an application or I've approved somebody. I go, how are you feeling? Are you nervous? Are you excited? And I just really wait for them to answer. And if they're nervous, I just remind them, hey, I've been doing this for 23 years. You're in good hands. And I try to help them see the visuals. I don't just quote a payment and a down payment and send them off a fee sheet, say figure it out. Either my clients, I really require them to either meet with me over Zoom, over some sort of computer where they can see me, see my screen, or meet with me in person. I realistically tell people, hey, if you're not stationary while we're having this conversation, then why don't we go ahead and reschedule? I have a lot of clients who submit an application. They'll be driving in their car. Okay, tell me what you got. And I'm like, listen, we're doing a transaction involving a few $100,000 that my bank is going to lend you. Let's make sure that you're prepared and that that you're taking this seriously, because I take your finance or your life seriously. And so that's kind of how I do it. And that's what's kept me in the business all these years. Yeah, I would have burnt out a long time ago if it wasn't for that.
Yeah. So started 2000,
2001.
Okay.
2001 is when I made the leap and went into Mortgage Elite is the first place I went to work at.
What month did you start?
God, you know what? It's been 24 years, 23 years, bro.
I'm just curious because I was born in April of that year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right on. Oh, God, are you kidding me? You were born the year I started in loan? Gosh, I'm a dinosaur. No, it was the summertime. I know that
Okay.
because there's a whole story behind how that went down. I ended up catching the bus to my job interview. You know, I was rough around the edges, didn't even know how to spell mortgage, didn't know how to T in it. Being honest with you about that, I thought mortgage was
Yeah.
MORGAG. The T, who does this English language thing? But yeah, I caught the bus there, went in rough around the edges, didn't think I was going to get the job. And a few hours later, got the phone call, hey, Forrest, we'd like to hire you as a loan officer. And the next day I came in and I was determined to show them what I got because that's just how I am. And I made about 600 phone calls that first day.
Wow.
And then I did that repeatedly for the next 6 months until I was the number one loan officer in the company. So it was cool.
600, is that with a dialer or without?
Without a dialer, man.
That's insane.
And that's from a notebook. And that means I got hung up on a lot.
Yeah.
That means I got hung up on a lot. And the only reason why they even knew that I was making that many phone calls was because the second day, the owner of the company, Greg Evenson, if he's watching, he might, or hopefully Greg, we'll tag you in this so you can co-sign. But he walked out with this call counter that was attached to the phones, and he was like, "This can't be real. Otherwise, you're just picking up and hanging up on people." I said, "As a matter of fact, they're hanging up on me." But I got a couple of people who filled out the application. He looked down. I had 3 or 4 apps. He's like, "Wow, first day on the job. That's pretty cool." And I had literally a phone book. Basically what it was. There was a 3-ring binder full of phone numbers. All it said was the person's name, who their lender was, and their phone number. That was it. And so I'd call, "Hi, Barb, how you doing? Hey, this is Forrest with Mortgage Elite. Can I help you save $200 to $300 a month on your mortgage payment?" And I would either get click, or I'd get like, "Well, how'd you get my number?" And I'd say, "Well, it's public information." And so I got really good on the phones. I was already kind of good on the phones from the bill collection experience.
So how many hours is that? I mean, if you're making 600 calls, you're probably sitting dialing for 10 hours a day,
10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Wow.
One thing that you'll find about me too, and I teach this to my guys that I hire, is that you want to be the best, you got to outwork the boss, period. And so Greg would get there at probably 7, 8 in the morning because he'd beat me. He worked out at Lifetime. He'd get in there all ripped up, looking good, coming from the gym. And he'd skate out about 5, 6 o'clock. So he was a hardworking guy. But the office was open till 9. And I found the most productive hours for dialing was when people got off of work.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with real people. And so during the day, I wouldn't get much. And I think that's where I'd burn through a lot of calls, just getting voicemails. I wouldn't leave voicemails. I think that's just bad practice. I would just call back the next day. I just, no answer, and make sure I called them the next day. But then 5 to 9 is when I would be the most productive. And so it's kind of like pre-workout. You get in the morning, you dial all day long, and as long as you still have that same energy, then you're going to be productive at night.
That's impressive because I feel like, do you know who Brian Danny is?
That name doesn't ring a bell. I apologize.
Okay. He's an agent out in California. He's like kind of associated with us through EXP, but he came and spoke with our team, and he was just like, you have to fall in love with the boring. Like, it sucks, it's boring, but like the boring, repetitive nature is kind of what leads to success. And he's someone that sells like 100 houses a year in California, does 110 million as like a team member.
You got his number? I'm just kidding.
It's like, maybe.
I'm a lender. You
got to find him on Facebook.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah. He's all over Facebook.
Right on. What's his name?
Brian Danny.
Okay, cool. When I watch this video, I'm going to write
that down. Look it up.
I'm going to call him, actually. We'll be like, we talked about
it,
man. But yeah, that's kind of my story. Is like I'm determined to outwork everybody. And it's not an ego thing. It's that I have to go and be able to show back up at home with results. If I'm working 10 to 12 hours a day, I got to show up home to my kids and my better half and say, today was productive. I'm accountable to them, right? And so, I'm not accountable to anybody else in this world besides my family and God.
Well, did you have that when you started? Like, you must have been 20 when you did mortgages, right?
I was hungry. I came from an impoverished neighborhood. My mom was a single mom. She was working 2 jobs. I moved out at a very early age and, kind of was on my own. So I was hungry for success. I think my motivations are way different, from 20 to 30 and then from 30 to 40. From 20, to 30, I just wanted to be balling. I wanted to have all the nice things and nice clothes. And then in my 30s, I wanted to be successful, looking at all these successful business people. Now, in my 40s, I understand that retirement is pretty close. It's coming up. I'm 43 years old. So retirement for me should be in the next 10 years, right? Just based on how long and how hard I've worked my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like? It's called stability. It's called financial freedom. It's called having your assets in place, having the right investments in place, owning property in the right areas. So that's what's important to me now. That's not the same idea of what success looked like when I was 30. When I was 30, it was to be, a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company and all that. And not to say that that's not realistic. That's still probably within scope for some of the things that I do, but it's just not the goal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like your goals kind of shift and change over time, and like just because you kind of like moved away from that doesn't mean that like you weren't capable of doing that. You just kind of went like it's maybe not the highest and best use of my time anymore, or like it's not really what like would drive me.
Exactly. And well, all of us are on a clock. We're all dying, believe it or not. The moment you're born, you start to die, right? And in my faith system, I believe that eventually I'm going to be accountable for the life I lived here as well. So that's an important part to me too, and working within the community to help folks that are from the same neighborhoods I grew up in, maybe going through some of the same struggles. Statistically, I'm lucky. You know what I mean? Statistically, I'm very lucky to be able to be fortunate enough to be sitting here having this podcast with you about real estate.
Well, do you feel like that's luck, or do you feel like that's deserved from 600 phone calls a day for years and years or months or however long you kept that up for?
50-50, because I was born in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I would say that there's growing up in Minneapolis, and like I said, sometimes we lived in Southside Minneapolis, not in the best neighborhood. Sometimes we lived in Northside Minneapolis, not in the best neighborhood. And there's a lot of innocent bystanders, even the guys who are on the right path, getting straight A's in school, ending up on the wrong, getting pulled over for the wrong reason and ended up on the wrong side of that, So I've seen a lot of people who worked hard, they weren't out here committing crimes or using drugs and alcohol, and still not, be as fortunate as me. So I would say luck's got a lot to do with it. But I'm a Christian, and in my faith, it says faith without works is dead. And so if you put a little bit of work behind it, you definitely help your odds of being a little bit more lucky, for sure.
Do you feel any imposter syndrome with that? Just like kind of like you said, like other people kind of maybe, like stayed out of it and then they just didn't end up kind of where you are, right? Like it's just kind of I guess you don't really know, right? Like you say you're lucky, but there's a component of like luck and work, but kind of as you progressed, you kind of feel like, well, like why me?
Yeah, you got to ask those questions, but you know what? The book is written, and everybody, I do believe that although, I have free will and I can choose to do what I want to do on a day-to-day basis, that there is some sort of preordained destiny for everybody. And so there's that. And maybe I'm lucky in that too. I think we're all a little bit lucky if you live in the United States of America. Facts. I was actually at an event yesterday, and it's the Disability Motivational Network. We were raising funds for them. And what they do is they send money back to a group in Liberia that basically takes in kids that are disabled. So if you have, some sort of deformity at birth, disability, mental disability, then your family looks at you as you're cursed or it's witchcraft, and they cast you out. And then those kids, rather than get to go to school with the other kids, have to go out in the streets and beg for money and things like that. And then if they have medical issues, they don't receive proper medical treatment because of this mindset of that culture there. And so I think just being born in the United States makes us all very lucky.
Yeah. That's interesting. I guess how far, like, are your parents from here? Or kind of like, do you have anyone in your family that's kind of come from elsewhere?
Yeah, so my grandmother and great-grandparents are Italian on one side. And then, no, so I make a joke about that, people ask me what I'm mixed with. And I say I'm Italian and boat 13. And the reason why I say that is because African Americans, they don't really have a way to trace their true roots. I mean, go ahead and give me Ancestry.com and those DNA tests all you want to.
Have you done one of those?
No.
Okay.
don't want to find the rest of the brothers and sisters I might got because people are already calling me asking me for money. I don't need no more. No, but no, my grandmother was born in Biloxi, Mississippi,
Okay.
and then my grandfather was born in Ottumwa, Iowa, and his father was a slave. And I got pictures I can show you one day about it, but it's really cool. It's not really cool, but it's really cool to see these pictures and know where your background comes from. So I don't have any obviously, my African American history is.
It goes back only so far.
Only goes back so far. It stops. Yeah, so there's no way to tell. Like, you can't trace most slavery, people that were involved in slavery back to their actual roots, which, I think it's its own thing. Right? It's truly African Americans are African Americans. There are no, you can't say like he's Nigerian maybe. You know what I mean? My business partner is Nigerian. He just got back from Nigeria. He went on a mission out there to actually try to find his birth father, who was deported when he was young, back to Nigeria after his student visa ran up. And he's been actually working closely with a village in Bauchi, Nigeria. He just put a solar-powered water system in this small village and brought water to thousands of people.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and then we're talking about some farming stuff that we're doing with some local farmers here and then doing some planting out there. So it's pretty dope.
So how long was he? He must split a lot of time between here and there, right? Or is it just kind of more remote stuff that he can do? Or
a lot of remote stuff, but he has been over there quite a bit. Not like back, a lot of it's remote. A lot of it's shipping. Like the thing with the Disability Motivational Network, that what they did is he got with them and he shipped like 15 giant boxes. I'm talking maybe 5 feet tall, 2 feet wide, boxes full of toys, clothes, shoes, and everything over to this group in Nigeria. Not Nigeria, I apologize, in Liberia, that works with the Disability Motivational Network to these unfortunate kids who are, they're fortunate to be part of this program, but unfortunate circumstances. He was able to ship this stuff off to them. So he does a lot of that kind of outreach mission stuff. I can't as much. I'm more involved in the day-to-day mortgage side of the business. He's heavily involved in the outreach and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, but you kind of keep the doors open so that you can kind of like, I would assume money goes towards that,
And I jump in where I get in where I fit in, but just, my thing is really helping out kids here. I like working with kids. It doesn't have to be culturally specific groups. It's just I like to work with kids in the inner city who may be struggling with whether it's addiction or resources or stuff that they might be going through in the judicial system, stuff like that. We actually have a house that Clinton and I own in South St. Paul that we partnered with a nonprofit called Journey of Hope, where we house kids that are their parents temporarily or permanently lost their parental rights, and we house them and work with the county on that. So,
yeah, you do a lot of stuff in the community.
Working on it, man.
To.
It's I'm just doing whatever God allows me to do, man, with my time, talent, and resources.
Oh, that's awesome. So I guess, do you ever, like, how much have you tried to go back kind of genealogy-wise? Because, like, I took one of those, like, I've taken 2 DNA tests, and they both come up with, like, 13 different things. It's kind of crazy.
But you're, like, Jamaican or something, right?
But if you go, so you go back, that's Jamaica. But then if you go far enough back.
Spain or something?
Well, it's, like, I forget what it is. It's, like, 4 or 5 different African countries because Jamaica is, like, a lot of the Caribbean is, like, indigenous people, but then, bring slaves in and then bring in French, English, Spanish, like whoever to whatever country, and then you just have that whole like hodgepodge of stuff there. So it's like Nigeria, Ivory Coast, can't remember all of them in there, but a lot of the Western African countries.
My grandmother is pretty much the only thing as far as me going. My grandma Rosalie Johnson. She's a heavyset, feisty Italian lady who I love to death, and she cusses out when we're out to lunch and buffets. It's the cutest thing because she just doesn't care. When you're almost, I think she's 80. She's 80. When you go out with her, it's just the right. And so I did go to Italy kind of on a pilgrimage to go check out what Italy was like. And, who doesn't want to go to Italy? Yeah. So I did that once. But yeah, I just don't really think about it too much. My grandfather, who married my grandmother when he came back from the war, he was in World War II. and so he had actually probably been back for some time before he married her. But it was like in the 60s is when he married her, and so it's like I guess 30 years later. But yeah, so my grandfather, Grandpa Gene, he was in the army, and he received a fleur-de-lis. He was kissed by the President de Gaulle of France for being a war hero in World War II at Normandy Beach. And my brother is a Marine. My son went to the Coast Guard. My uncle, who was pretty much a step-in father when my dad was out and about running around singing, was a Marine. And so I'm as blue blood American as possible. So I don't really look into the rest of it, you know.
Yeah, I kind of like going back a little bit because for me it's like interesting because like I spent a lot of my time with my mom. Like my parents were divorced, so it's like I don't 100% really have that like Jamaican culture or background, but it's like I'm still 50% Jamaican, so it's kind of weird. But I feel like a lot of children of like, you know, first generation Americans, second generation, like they kind of lose that because like their parents want you to be more Americanized or something like that, and then or they just like they themselves are trying to assimilate and kind of fit into the American culture, and then they just don't really like want to pass on that stuff or just can't really, or they try to like hold it all in.
I think it's a big thing for some Italian Americans too. Like Italian Americans traditionally are super proud people. I'm Italian, you know. I got uncles and aunts that act like that, but you know, I think that there's also, like you said, that stigma of having to assimilate and fit in. Gosh, being biracial, you know, I dealt with that probably from my earlier on teens and stuff like that, not knowing who I was. That's you know, I think that's a big thing. It's real. It's real, but you know, if you ever heard that there's a negative slang term for Italians called WAPs, and that stands for without papers. And so if you think about it, like that was that's like this negative stigma. If you were an Italian coming into New York and you were first generation New Yorker, they were literally saying you came over without papers, like you're this, you know, border jumper and stuff like that. And I think that's just terrible because everybody in this country is foreign. Every single person, unless you're a Native American, you know, you're a foreigner to this land. And this country, the backbone of everything is built on people that migrated over here without papers. I mean, everybody, you know. Think about the railroads and you know, the lives that were lost building those. And just, yeah, I think our country is built on people coming over here without papers. There's got to be some importance, and I'm not trying to get super political because I don't really have too much political view, but I feel like there's definitely got to be some importance with certain security now that terrorism's such a big thing. But I think that, you know, this has always been a country of an open gate. You know, come one, come all, right?
Yeah, like overall, like, you know, let people through, but it's like you gotta kind of go through with a fine tooth comb. Like you can let in 1,000 people, but maybe there's one bad egg out of there.
Yeah,
not, you know,
plenty
not
of bad eggs here already.
Yeah,
plenty of bad eggs here. You know, some of the bad eggs started Chicago. You know, that's one of my favorite cities in the country. You know, New York. You know, I mean, think about it. Like the American economy was built on Canadian whiskey after Prohibition. I mean,
I think it's good to have like all the different influences and everything come in. It's just kind of interesting. Like everyone's got their own little opinion about it and own views, and I think it's hard to wrap your head around it sometimes because there's just so many different, like, you know, like some people could have like struggled their whole lives. Like they've tried 20 years to make it to the U.S. They finally get here, and then it's like everyone's like, oh, you came here without papers. Like you suck. You're a terrible person. Go back. And it's like, well, I fought tooth and nail to get here. I work as hard as I can to support my kids, and I got to deal with this.
Yeah, you know, Clinton just spoke at a state meeting, a legislation passing for renting to undocumented Latin Americans, and they just passed this bill because he actually lowers the barrier of entry. My business partner Clinton, he lowers the barrier of entry for all races, colors, financial situations, and stuff to be able to rent. That doesn't mean he's just going to let anybody rent at his place, but you know, you can do a background check on paper with somebody's credit, and you know, you can look at somebody's criminal background and make judgments. But the best way to do a background check on a person is do what we're doing. You know, get proximate to that person, get to know a person, and then once you've spent some time with that person or in that community, then you still don't get to pass judgment, but you can maybe make a decision or have some better discernment on how you're going to handle that person or that situation. You know what I mean? But I think too many people, social media is a big part of it, will take a glimpse at a situation and then make an instant judgment call based on something that they see. You know, my mom always told me that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So wear clean underwear in case you end up going to the hospital. You know.
Yeah. Huh. No, I think people are very complex, and I think more complex than other people notice. I guess like I've been spending a lot of time like, because I feel like I always used to like something would happen and be like it's because of that, like that one thing, like this happened because of like X happened because of Y. But now I realize like it's always a combination. Like it's never just one thing that leads to something. It's like yeah, someone cut you off and you got upset, but you were like you were already in a stress state because you didn't sleep well. You didn't sleep well because something happened the night prior. Like there's always this long chain of events. I think like a lot of people kind of like don't notice that as much. Like you kind of see the cause and effect, but you have to go back a little bit farther sometimes.
Yeah, everybody's got layers, man. So, we're getting real deep here, Nathan. We're getting real deep. So let me ask you, man. Give me like now that you've been doing this business for a while, give me the craziest real estate story. Was it the craziest listing you ever went to? Craziest client you ever dealt with? Craziest real estate story you got? Go.
I'll give you my year so far. So get under contract with someone, then she completely goes silent, ghosts, and we have to cancel the contract and get like she doesn't sign the cancellation, so we have to get a statutory rescission. That was terrible. Hated every second of that. Next one I got under contract. We got under contract with a duplex on the buy side, then had an offer lined up off market that we were going to accept, and then all of a sudden once we got it accepted, we find out that the triplex that they're selling was zoned as a duplex but built as a single family originally. And so the city wouldn't so it was built as a single family, converted to a triplex, for whatever reason changed the zoning to a duplex. Then the triplex had rental licenses, so it was fine. My people moved into it as a single family home, didn't renew the rental license, so because that lapsed, then they're not able to rent it out as a triplex, and then the whole duplex thing wasn't working. So then obviously the value gets way crushed. So then we're like, oh, we're going to put 10% down in the next place. That went to 3.5% down, like just barely. And then that's like, hey, investor, like I need $6,000 more than you're like wanting to pay for this. Like these people need this money to move into the next place. So thankfully he's willing to do that. And then next one, we get a week and a half out of closing. Listing agent's like, hey, so seller's husband died 3 years ago and then they never did probate. So we got to figure that out. They're like probate hearing is May 6th. We were able to close yesterday because some special administrator or whatnot, kind of over my head, but just a bunch of stuff there. And then had a listing that just got an offer accepted. Could have sworn the property was in a trust. In 1996, they put it in a trust. Lawyer never filed the deed, so they have a copy of the deed. They have all the paperwork, but it was never filed with the county. So now we probably have to go through probate. Yep. And then there's a sibling or a child of the deceased that is going to probably put a big stink in.
Contest the whole probate?
Yep.
Oh, God, man. Well, if you guys know anything about that's happening with this NAR lawsuit and you're thinking about representing yourself to go buy a house, this is a prime example of why you need a buyer's agent. If you think you can navigate this on your own without a professional representing you and getting paid what they're worth, I'm going to tell you right now, think again. What's your thoughts on that whole NAR lawsuit? I know like you don't have years like I do in the business, but I'm not an agent.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to impact you guys representing buyers the most. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I see people go both ways with it, but I feel like it's beneficial. Like I guess I don't really see it as too much of a negative. Like you have to have a contract to show houses with people. It's like, okay, like maybe I'll show less houses, but then I'll get people that are more serious about it. And I think if you're just good about being upfront, having conversations with people and really like showing your value, then I think you get people to sign that contract more. And once someone signs a contract, they're probably a lot more like they're locked in, right? Like you don't just sign a contract and go, oh, whatever, let's cancel this. I mean, some people do, but I feel like it's like, it's like you like setting an appointment. Like if someone's like, oh, I'll call you in 2 weeks, or like let's set something up in 2 weeks, they're probably not going to reach out. But if you're like, hey, let's just pencil something in just so we have it, they're way more likely to show up. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I think also too, like you're going to trim a lot of the fat in the industry too. Like like 40 to 50% of all LOs were gone in the last year, but only like 10% of realtors left. I think this maybe flushes out another like 20, 30% of realtors or whatever.
Yeah. I've seen the industry go. We had 3,000 licensed brokerage shops in the state of Minnesota, 3,000 plus, prior to the licensing requirements in 2009 for us to all have to partake in with the SAFE Act, Secure and Fair Enforcement Act. And so, I think after that, there was like 300.
Wow.
literally like overnight. So I've seen the business have its, it's cleansed itself several times, and the people that can adapt, change, and create will dominate. So that's kind of what we're doing too. Is we're just adapting to the changes. We're creating new programs and partnerships, and yeah, we plan on dominating the market. On a national level. I don't just work in Minnesota, so I have offices and teammates all throughout the country, and so yeah, I'm excited about. I'm really looking forward to it. Like we've created some stuff that's outside the box that I believe is going to, it's created the foundation so that when the storm comes, you're not knocking my house over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay. So so you said you're in every state except New York now?
Yeah. So PRMG can operate in every state except for New York.
Okay.
So that's the only state that PRMG can't do business in. And it's not that they can't, it's just that the licensing, brick and mortar, all the requirements for New York. New York's a tough state. Ask any lender, they'll tell you. But yeah, we got offices in Hawaii, Alaska, you name it. We got it there for sure.
So how did you, I guess, kind of what's your role at PRMG? Like you don't own it, but you like are a branch
So I'm a branch manager. I'm an employee of PRMG. I'm a W-2 employee, but they allow us to operate pretty autonomously, staying within the guidelines of compliance. And my job is to not only produce loans, but to recruit and retain top tier talent and to look for those people in all the places. So I just yesterday was helping my senior vice president discuss a deal with a guy who owns a real estate company and a mortgage company currently in Colorado and Nebraska. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to put anything out there on the web. Oops. But I just had a conversation with that guy the other day, and that went really well. So that's part of my job is really to get out there and continue to build the brand, the name, and add to the team, and I get compensated for it.
So how much of your job is building and how much of it is like selling loans? And then I guess, is there any other component in there?
It just really depends on the time. If it's 2020 and interest rates are really at 2.75, if you don't think I'm going to put my loan officer hat on and go after the business like a piranha, you're thinking about the wrong guy. But then if it's times like this where you're seeing people go, wow, I don't know what I'm going to do with my real estate business, or I don't know what I'm going to do with my loan business. Those times of uncertainty are time for me to come in and go, hey, there's something better here. We can offer you X, Y, and Z to help you maintain your income. So that's for me. It just really depends on the situation. Depends on the time of the season that the business is in.
So what do you guys do to kind of like, I would assume you're going to find someone who's maybe down on the year, and then you're going to want to take them, like, say they sold 50 last year, now they're down to 30. You're probably trying to boost them back up to 50. What do you do?
60.
Okay.
Get them to 70.
But what's your like systematic approach to getting them to that point? Like,
great question. So what we do is my branch has several coaches. So me and my business partner have several coaches. I think if you are not coachable, you can't grow because you're only going to learn from yourself, right? They say that, a wise man, a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from others' mistakes, and a fool never learns. And so, at the end of the day, I want to be a wise man. I want to learn from others that may have walked the, path before me. So I have coaches. I have a coach named Richard Milligan. He's one of the top recruiter coaches in the country, and he works with me like once a week to talk about different strategies on recruitment. Recruitment is a facet of life that you can use in everything, right? When you're dealing with your future employees, you're dealing with, your girlfriend, your dating life. You got to be good at recruiting. And then, so I have a coach for that. And then I have a coach that helps us strategize how do we get direct to consumer? How do we get direct with real estate agents? 100% truth with you guys is that Tyler Miller and your team has been on my daily success plan, and part of my regimented phone calls that I'd make up until I was able to walk through that door and start to try to work with your team. So that's part of it, teaching strategies on how do you follow up and consistently stay and communicate and create relationships, right? So we do that, and then we put a lot of tech behind it. So our tech platform that we have at PRMG is second to none. Ask any leading industry lender, anybody that works in our space and that knows anything about anything, they'll tell you that our tech offering is second to none. Nobody has the tech that we have. So we take all that stuff, that horsepower of the tech, the support from our corporate office with the processing, et cetera, put a daily success plan behind that, teach them a little recruitment sales, and if somebody follows those breadcrumbs, typically they will end up on the right side of the commission street.
Okay. And so you said you were kind of chasing my team for a while. How long was that? And I guess
years.
So what's the craziest, like, I followed up with this person for like 8 years, they finally buy? Like, what's the longest follow-up story you have?
I got a long story. I got a lady that her loan, she had like 17 loans. They were all investment properties. They were all in the same development, right? And this is when I first got in the business. It was about maybe 2-3 years I was in the business, so I was new. And we were brokering loans at that time to Fifth Third Bank. And it was a flood of business at that time. So much business coming in that Fifth Third's underwriting turn times turned from like 1 week to 2 weeks to like 90 days. So you had to wait 90 days for an underwrite. No knock on Fifth Third. They're a great company. This is just decades ago, right? And so the industry was just backlogged as a whole, like all lenders, but Fifth Third was the worst. And the only one that would take this many bank finance deals was them, or the chunk that I needed them to take. And her husband was the really nice guy. I don't want to say their name here, but he was the public relations director for 3M. And so they made really good money, and this was kind of her project. So he was on the loans, but he didn't want to have it, it wasn't his project. It was his wife's deal. And so she would come in. She was so kind. She would come in and she'd be patient with me as I try to navigate all of these lease agreements. And so just to put the paperwork together probably took me 60 days to even just understand the paperwork. Guys, I'm better. I made a lot of noise. Guys, I'm better at it now than I was then. So don't think it takes that long now. I can do a 17 house deal probably in a month. So, but this one ended up taking like 1.5 years, 2 years to put that whole thing together. And she was just so patient, because I'd call up every other day, hey, can I get this? And she's like, what's up with underwriting? I'm like, they said another 90 days. Really? Well, yeah, we're not going to hear anything for 90 days. But they invited me to the 3M Golf Classic out here in Blaine, right behind their house. I got to meet Arnold Palmer, like the actual drink, the guy. I got to meet Chichi Rodriguez. So that was cool, yeah. But that was probably one of my hardest, craziest stories for that type of loan.
So is that 17 paychecks or is that one?
At the time, it was one decent commission check. One decent. This is back in the day where we didn't have the same regulations that we do now. Mm-hmm. So we were able to charge now I think the government has their hands on everybody's pocket too much, including look what's happening with you guys. And it's something you work on for 2 years, you should be paid well for it. And so I was paid well for it.
Yeah. Wow. I'd love to sell 17 houses all at once. That'd be my year.
You got to remember, we do more loans than you guys do real estate.
Yeah,
so that just is what it is. It's all you guys do get. I mean,
bigger piece of the pie.
Pre-lawsuit, but you guys as of right now you get a bigger piece of the pie. But like loan officers, our average month for like a full-time loan officer is like 3 to 4 deals, right, a month. And consistently from 2005 to 2013, I didn't do less than 10 a month. On average, maybe 15, 16. And I know there's guys that kill me in this business. I have a lot of good friends that are top producing loan officers.
So what's the because like for realtors, it's like what, like the bottom 49% sell like less than, or like what the average realtor sells like 4 or 5 houses like
a year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, is the average loan officer that like 3 to 4 a month then, or is that just kind of like average and like average full time?
Anybody who wants to consider themselves a loan officer should be doing a minimum of 2. On average 3 to 4 a month. Anybody doing less than that should and look, I just don't think that person they should look at their business. Maybe they can do something different, because if you're doing 1 a month, you can make that kind of money managing a McDonald's. So what are you really doing? Yeah. You know what I mean? You're in this business to help people, but ultimately also to earn the income, because it's a stressful job. Mm-hmm. Like, but loan officers are the first ones to throw under the bus. If I took my shirt off, you're gonna see the tire marks. You know what I mean? People blamed us for the fall of the Western civilization when the market crashed in 2009. So if you're willing to take that kind of whooping every day, then you need to be compensated for it.
So what's your view on like 2009? Because like for me, the way it's always explained is like, there's just less lender guidelines, right? It was just easier to get a loan. Everyone could get a loan, and then like that's why it all fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you see that in a different way?
Were you 8 years old?
Yes, I was born in 2001.
All right, so I'm going to bring you back to when you were 8.
I was hanging out in 3rd grade.
Hank, grab your big wheel. We're going back to when you were 8. All right, no. So what happened is that a few things. Banks, somebody was drinking and doing way too many drugs that was helping create the rules, because we were able to offer programs that even to me, a guy who didn't understand mortgages, just thought had to be crazy. There was a program that one lender offered, which was 125% cash out loan to value. So meaning like if your house was worth $400,000, we could give you another $100,000 to pay off your credit card debt. Maybe take a little cash to the casino.
Wow.
And that's a backwards program, because that just sets somebody up right away to have $100,000 negative equity. Mm-hmm. And now, what happens when that person loses that job or can't afford to make that payment anymore? They can't sell the house because you just put them $100,000 upside down.
Yeah, well, it's probably 5 years before they even make that back in equity.
Maybe. And then you got if you did it in 2007, forget about it. Now the house is worth $250,000. So you have that, and then you have there was a bank called World Savings Bank, and they were purchased by Wachovia, and they had came out with a program called an option arm. And the option arm was your interest rate would be actually 6.5%, 7% on a 2-year adjustable rate. But you would only have to pay 1%. So the other 5% was deferred every single month. So you would be like, great, my $400,000 house, I only have to pay a payment of $400 a month. Of course, and then you turn around and you look 10 years from now and you're like, wow, why do I owe $800,000? And then you have, foreclosures that hit the market, and your house that you bought for $400 is now worth $250,000, and you owe $800,000. You have no choice but to walk away from that, right? So there was just lots of what we call fog up a mirror loans. And then in addition to that, you add in the fraudsters that came in. There was a lot of fraud in like 2002 to 2009 era, where people were making up pay stubs. They were making up W-2s. They were making up asset statements, bank statements. Title companies were in on it. Actually, I'll tell you a story. I heard about a guy who was an appraiser, title company, and a real estate company and a builder, all in cahoots. And they built a whole development somewhere in rural somewhere, right? And they took out all these loans from the bank and sold all these houses to what they call ghost buyers, right? They weren't even real people. And they took all these loans for these, real people, but it was somebody else's social date of birth credits, So all these identities, built this whole town. And nobody knew what was happening. These guys got away with hundreds of millions of dollars until a postman was out there for some reason driving through the area, looked up and noticed there wasn't any power lines going to the house, the homes. The whole town, the whole little development was completely empty. It was a ghost town.
Wow.
So there was a lot of fraud. There was definitely a lot of fraud that was happening. And the good news is I worked for a mortgage banker who just had high integrity. It was a family-owned mortgage broker, named Mortgage Elite. And Greg Evenson was there. His father, Jerry Evenson, worked there. His mother, Joan Evenson. And they instilled some really good values into Greg. And he never pushed me to sell an option arm. And frankly, I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't sell it. There was people on my team that were selling these option arms. I just didn't know what it was. So, I...
Probably for the best.
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of people. I ended up buying that company 13 years later. I bought Mortgage Elite. Okay. He wanted to close down. He was, made a lot of money. He was ready to retire, and he was a good friend of mine. And he said, we're in Vegas. He was like, I'll sell you the whole company for $30,000. I was like, bet. I failed miserably, ran it into the ground in like a year. Learned my lesson. You learn from your mistakes, not your successes. But yeah, people were calling me, later on as I was a manager of that office, trying to figure out what they could do. And I'm talking like one lady was a superintendent of the Minneapolis public schools, and I helped her out. I'm not going to say the year or the time that was, but I don't want to mess up her stuff. But yeah, we ended up figuring that out, and I helped people walk through some modifications with their servicers and stuff. I didn't charge them for that. I just did everything kind of that. I care about people.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like you've seen a lot of like, now fast forward 15 years after that, do you feel like you've seen a lot of like you helped out people in a difficult situation then, and then they've just been really loyal after that?
Yeah, my past customer database, I'd be fine. Like if I'd never recruited another person, never talked to another agent, never did any of the things that I do on a daily basis, I would still, to some scale, be considered successful by some people, right? But like I said, I have to show up every day and answer to my family on what I did that day and how how I'm moving forward their lives with what I get up and decide to do every day.
So what do you do to recharge?
Church. Go on right after this, man.
Mm-hmm.
Good Friday. No, God and work out in the morning. My back's kind of messed up, so I've been on the bench for about 30 days. But I get up and hit the gym at 7 a.m., coffee, and then I like to vacay. I got an Airbnb that I'm selling actually next month in Arizona.
What part?
Mesa.
Okay.
Mesa, Arizona. It's gorgeous. And so
where's that in relation to Phoenix? Like northeast?
It's like 10 minutes away from downtown Phoenix.
Okay.
My place is so cool because it's 15 minutes away from Scottsdale, 15 minutes away from Phoenix, 15 minutes away from Chandler. It's going to be sad.
Yeah. Why are you selling it?
Just because the market shifted for vacation rentals there, became overly saturated during the Super Bowl. And I don't really go in business to break even. Doesn't make sense for me. So, that's it. And also great return. I bought it for $410 3 years ago, sold it for $564,000.
Oh, wow.
So
that's a good return.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like you'd still keep getting more equity though? Because if it's an oversaturated market,
move the money somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I just stayed at one. It was kind of like on the border of Phoenix and Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like looking. It was interesting because they were trying to sell it, and like the numbers that they had were just like horrendous. They're like, oh, you could spend like $20,000 on this and that $80,000 of value, and you're gonna cash flow this much. You're gonna have a 15% cash on cash return. I'm like, where are you pulling those numbers?
There's a lot of people. The only one that's actually still good to own in is Scottsdale.
Okay.
The rest of it is not worth it. Unless, I take that back. If you go into like within the Chandler, Mesa, Tempe, that Phoenix, I wouldn't say Airbnb is a good model there now. I specialize in teaching people how to purchase vacation rentals. We have every single investment program there is, DSCR, you name it. So I can help educate people. We use a website. I'm going to give this website a pump, even though they're probably not paying me for this, but if this goes viral, I want my cut. But airdna.co is the best place to do your research on vacation rentals. And then a good friend of mine named Stas, he's a realtor, he provided me a pro forma that I use to really kind of math that stuff out. So, and then we work with different management companies throughout the country to determine what makes the most sense.
So how accurate do you feel like AirDNA is? Like if they say
Super
you're going to get $3,000 a month, is it
super accurate? You just gotta you have to do the real research. You can't go, well, this one says, like, if you look at it, they actually just revamped their whole website, and it's so accurate that our bank will actually use the numbers for AirDNA to qualify for somebody for a DSCR loan.
Oh wow! And so when you say, like, I know you kind of touch on that, like the specializing in it, but do you kind of like also help people find the management company?
Everything. We'll help them find the property, the location, the management company. I'm actually got a guy right now. He's selling a duplex in Brooklyn Park that's free and clear. He wants to move around the money. He wants to put some money into a restaurant. He wants to buy another property here locally. And then he's like, what do I do with the rest? I'm like, let's help you find a condo in Myrtle Beach. We connected with his cousin who happens to live in North Carolina. She's going in on it with him, and they're getting the house, the condo we have picked out in Myrtle Beach will pay itself off in 7 to 10 years based on our pro forma.
Wow.
You put the down payment down. You never have to make a payment. You got this beautiful place to go visit. 10 years from now, you know, say it goes from $300,000 to $500,000, which is very realistic. You got $500,000 and you put $30,000 into it.
So what, like, if someone's like, I want to buy an Airbnb right now, but I also want to like be able to stay there occasionally, like what cities would you recommend for them?
Las Vegas is probably one of the better ones right now. Gatlinburg, Tennessee, if you can find anything there, it's pretty saturated. South Carolina is a really, really good one. Florida is awesome if you can afford the real estate you would need. Like Florida, you need to buy like $1 million home to do it right, you know. But Florida's really, really good. There's always constantly people touring there. Just depends on what the budget of the person is. So if you're a starter investor, you got like 50 grand to play with, 40 grand. You want to get into the Airbnb business, I'm going to probably point you towards Las Vegas or Myrtle Beach.
And if someone's got, like, say they're playing with 50 grand and then they're going to throw that into a property in Vegas, like, kind of what do you see that being like? What do you see the typical return? Like you say, you're going to pay it off in 7 to 10 years. Is that
Vegas
all the
isn't like
profits
that.
back in?
Vegas is no, I wouldn't say Vegas 7 to 10 years. I'd say Vegas maybe 15 years.
Okay.
But the thing about Vegas is it's more consistent and stable for a tourism market. And you don't have to get a single family house. Sure, people go to Vegas and rent single family homes, but you can get a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo inside the Palms for like $275.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So if you can get that, then now you got this gorgeous place to visit. They got a hotel front desk. Everything's taken care of. Maintenance, it's a lot less upkeep, a lot less setup that you have to put into it. Security, all that stuff is different. It's all managed right there by the building.
Yeah, and I guess it's not like Vegas is really going to go anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
So yeah, that'd be a pretty good stable one. And
Built
then I
on
guess,
a lot of Vegas was another one of those places in America that was built on a lot of immigrants. You know, my Italianos, the guys came over without papers and built Vegas.
So for a DSCR, can you get away with that 10% down, or is it 15 is the lowest?
We have a 15% option, but typically you're going to see 25.
Okay.
That's what you need, you know, to do a DSCR. And
So if you're going to that Vegas option, then you're looking at like 45K or so for that 275, 300 condo.
Yeah, exactly.
And then where do you see people typically getting their money from that? Like just having cash that they saved up, or equity, or
Equity. So like you got a house right now, everybody that bought in 2019 and 2020 has equity. And the Latin term for a mort is death. And so if you think about mortgage, right? The word mortgage, it's pay till you die. And that money is dead that you put into your house. So when you pay down principal on your house, you're not seeing a return on that money. And honestly, if you're on a 30-year fixed loan, it's not like your payment goes down and you have more money to invest elsewhere. That's an old way of thinking, right? Is that pay down the loan and you won't have a mortgage when you retire, and you know, go work every day. And that's the guys that were like building the railroads and you know, putting steel and beams up. And I love those guys, respect them. They're the backbone of this country, what made it happen. But that's an old way of thinking. Now you can tap into your equity. You can put that equity into an income-generating property, and then you could sell that house later on down the road and pay off your primary 10 times faster.
Yeah, because I guess you can. I mean, if you have a 7% interest rate there, but if you could take money that would go there and put that somewhere and make 15%, then you have the 8% spread, and then you're getting appreciation there, and then that's maybe more like a 13% spread.
Exactly. Times it's work smarter, not harder. You can work for 30. You know, the thing about a 30-year mortgage too, if you never pay extra, you pay about double what you borrow.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's figure that out. And I think that, you know, I think you might think, well, then it's contradictory to what you said. I should pay extra. No, what you do is you take that money that you would be paying on the balance and you put it somewhere where it's gaining money, even if it's not gaining 15%. If you put it in your mortgage, you pay down the principal, you're still not gaining money on that, right? You might have accelerated your payoff a little bit, but you're not gaining money on that. Why wouldn't you put it into even a high-yield savings account that's compounding interest, right?
To play devil's advocate, you put money into principal, but then that pays off the loan faster, so then you have less interest that you pay overall. So, I mean, you're reducing the amount of money they have to pay in the long run.
But it's a one-time principal reduction that only boosts you that far in the amortization versus putting, say, $50,000 into an index universal life plan or a high-yield savings account that compounds every single month on that amount. So, yeah, you're getting 5% on the 50 grand the first month, right? And then you're getting that next time that 5% hits on that 50 grand, now you're getting 5% on 60 grand and so forth. Do you get what I'm saying? So now that 5% that you're making, even if it's only 5%, it's compounding on the total. So now 10 years from now, if you took that money out of a high yield savings account, Index Universal Life, or you took your Airbnb that was getting an 8.8% cap rate and you applied that money towards a principal balance, you pay the house off faster.
So what would you say to someone?
Life hack.
And so are you just kind of about that, like in all scenarios? Like if someone says they're going to buy a $500,000 house, they have 20% down, would you say, no, do 5% down and take that other, what would that be?
It depends on the situation.
Okay.
Because I have a client that I just got off the phone with this morning, and they have an 800 credit score. They put down 10% on a property, and their mortgage insurance is only $50 a month. So in that situation, yeah, that's super smart. Just put down 10%, take the other 10% and reinvest it somewhere, because your mortgage insurance that you're getting hit for is only $50 a month. But then there are certain situations where the guy's got a 680 credit score and they put down 10% and their debt ratios are 49%. And the mortgage insurance companies, mortgage insurance is risk-based insurance that covers the lender in the event that you default, right? And so that risk to that insurance company is higher, so they're going to charge you a higher premium. So then in that situation, I'd say no, because you're throwing away money to this mortgage insurance premium. If you got the extra 10%, put the 10% down. So everybody's a fingerprint.
Situation by situation, yeah. Interesting.
That's why you need a professional.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's so many moving pieces. I think like outsider looking in, it's like, oh, it's easy. Like you just put a sign in the garden, it sells. Or like you just go to someone, call them, say, hey, can I buy this? Like you just write a check and you're done. Like I've had people say like, wait, there's more steps than just like walking in, writing a check, and then being done with it.
What do you mean? All you do is just open doors for people, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's all you do, right? Like you just, here's a list, and I'll just open the doors, and that's my whole job, and pay me 3%. If that was so easy, everybody would do it.
Or people think we get paid just a salary. Like they just think, oh wait, you're not making money for this? Like you're not getting paid? No, I don't make money until we close.
Yeah. That's one place I don't envy you guys, because I know that you have to, in some cases, or you'll find a guy and you'll look at 2 or 3 homes and boom, that's done. And then you'll have some people, you'll look at 20, 30, 40, 50 homes over the course of years, and they never do anything. They walk and they keep renting. Or they do buy, and it's like they buy a $150,000 house, and then you measure what you got paid versus your time investment, and you're looking at the guy at Dairy Queen going, dude, I should trade jobs with you. You know what I mean? I always say that. I always say, like, if I ever did anything different, I would change oil. Like, I seriously, and that's not a shot at the guys at Valvoline or anything like that, but for me, I would love an opportunity. I think I will. When I retire, I'll probably do something that's just, because I got to keep busy. I'd like to do something that's the same every time. Twist the nut to the right, let the oil drip, put the bucket under it. And maybe I'm oversimplifying their job. You know what I mean? Who knows? Because like people do to us. But I would want to do something simpler when I retire. I'm not going to do absolutely nothing. I'll definitely do some philanthropy and some community outreach. But yeah, I want to do something real simple.
Would you ever I know it's probably more complicated, but would you ever buy a business just to work in it? Like just buy start a Valvoline franchise.
I'm done buying businesses when I retire. I don't just do mortgages. Man.
Okay. So how many businesses do you own, and kind of what fields are those in?
Got lead generation businesses. Like I said, we got properties that are housing the youth that are, in situations. I consider the Airbnb vacation business as a business. So yeah, those types of things.
So what's your lead generating business?
So we have a business called LGS that generates leads for mortgage companies, real estate companies, roofing companies, insurance companies, things like that.
So how do you guys do that? Just kind of more like, what's your main source of, acquiring customers?
Outbound calls set up through a CRM, text message blast, videos, website, email, you name it, social media. But a lot of it's call center stuff.
Okay. So how did you start that? And is that something where you have leads coming in through you, or is it just more so this is a separate entity, this is going to sell to other people and I just take the money from that, as opposed to give me a lead, I sell it and then make money?
It's good to have a business partner. Put it to you that way. No, for real. That's one of the things. If you ever go into business with somebody, I'd tell you that the best thing you can do is decide that you don't run in the same lane, right? Like, it's not a relay race where I'm going to hand it off to you and then you run because I'm out of breath. We're running at the exact same time. We're running in tandem, but we're running on different lanes after different projects all the time. So a lot of to answer your question on that, a lot of that should be left to answer by my business partner, because he handles a lot of that stuff.
Okay. how'd you guys get into business together? And like kind of what all, like, it seems like you guys are like, I mean, you said womb mate in one of your posts. Are you guys brothers or are you just like that close?
I said from the womb to the tomb.
Yeah.
That's actually a line from BMF. Yeah, man, at the end of the day, we are brothers. Like, we're not actual blood brothers, but we became brothers a long time ago. We were on vacation one time, and it's just like a lot of real long, strong friendships. It was like we got in a heated debate, arguing. I think ego got in the way, and then we looked at each other, smiled, gave each other a big hug, and we're brothers ever since. And that's the truth. That's exactly how that happened. That's really how we decided to be brothers. Thing is that I turned down a few businesses. So my business partner, his family started a few major restaurants like Butcher and the Boar, Bar La Grassa, Barrio, a lot of major stuff. And I had owned a restaurant and bar up in Pine City called Floppy Crappie. Some people who are watching this might know it as Wyski's or the Neighborhood Lounge. It's a big place, 18,000 square feet right on the lake. Wow. And I brought my friends up there to help me run it, and I failed miserably. Like I said earlier, you learn from your mistakes, not your successes. So I came back from that with my tail between my legs back to the mortgage company. Like, okay, I'm sorry I left. I was only there for like 6 months, and it failed really bad. Surprised it's still standing. And then he came to me and he said, hey, this building that I own, my uncle's going to turn it into the best restaurant in the United States. And I go, man, that restaurant business is tough business, buddy. I don't want to do it. So he wrote it up on a napkin, gave me a whole design on a napkin how it was going to look. And I was like, just count me out. And then fast forward like 2-3 years later, it's the number 6 restaurant in the country. Wow. And so I was like,
which restaurant was that?
Butcher and the Boar.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so his Uncle Tim and him and his Uncle Chuck and a couple of other partners, they put it together and it became the number 6 restaurant in the country. Wow. And so, I didn't want to say no to the wrong answer again. He kind of approached me about this idea of we were going to start a call center and a lead generation business. And I said, sure, why not? I'm not going to tell you no again and miss out on another home run. We did that, and that's the lead business that I told you about, and then that kind of dovetailed into the mortgage business.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And now we're at 6:30, so I know you want to leave, but do you have time for one more question?
I got one more question.
All right, final question. So I hear you talk about, like, I think a lot of times people with ego will be like, oh, like, I've never failed, like, and just try to hide that. But you've been very open about, like, had this business, failed miserably, had this, failed miserably. But, I mean, do you feel like you've had more failures or more successes? And then what would you say to someone who's, like, in that phase, like they maybe have just had a failure? Like they started a business, they think this is going to be amazing, this is my big break, and it just falls apart.
You know what? I want to tell you that if you fell hard, think about how hard you fell. Not failed, but fell, right? So if your business fails and you feel like the world just fell on your face and you're in a lot of pain, good for you, because then you're going to be measured by how well you pick yourself back up. And so I think that, you should go after life hard enough to fail. You should go out there, you should ride your bicycle as fast as you possibly can downhill until you flip over your handlebars so you can learn how to ride that bicycle better. I went and taught myself how to snowboard, and that was the hardest thing on the planet. I literally got a concussion that first night out, but guess what? I showed up on day 2 and I snowboarded again. And I got better and better, and then, you know what? I don't really like snowboarding, so I went back to my skis, but then guess what? I'm really good on skis. For an old man, I can get down in the freestyle park. So my advice to a person is go after business and after life like you're planning to fail. Go so hard that you're gonna fail, because if you just ride the easy lane and you do what's easy, you're never gonna grow. You're gonna just stay right where you're at. If you want to hit a ceiling and then break above that ceiling, you got to jump higher.
Wow, it's an amazing podcast.
Right on, man. I appreciate it, Nathan.
Oh, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. We'll have to do another one because I feel like.